Currently, it is 85 degrees here on the campus of St. Louis Community College at Florissant Valley. I'm Jell with your noon news update. 2 homeless teenagers are accusing the Riverview Gardens School District of violating the rights of homeless students. The teens filed a lawsuit yesterday claiming the district and the state failed to comply with laws requiring they help homeless students. It includes delaying or preventing their enrollment and failing to provide them with the required transportation to school. The suit is asking a judge to order the district to immediately enroll homeless students and provide the required services. One man is wounded following a shooting that caused a 2-car crash in St. Louis. Police say the victim was shot while driving last night on Kings Highway Boulevard. The shooting caused his vehicle to collide with another south of I-70. The shooting victim and 3 other people in the second car were hospitalized. Charges are pending following a quadruple shooting at a St. Louis gas station last week. 2 men and 2 women were shot Friday night outside Salama's Mobile Market on North 13th Street. All the victims were hospitalized. A suspect was later arrested. A search is underway to find an elderly man with dementia who went missing over the weekend in St. Louis. Authorities say Theodore Jackson left his home Sunday to go to a nearby grocery store. He didn't return. Jackson was driving a gold 2002 Chevy Impala. Moving on to the weather. Today, we've got PM thunderstorms with a high of 84, low of 70 degrees. Tomorrow, we got thunderstorms, high of 77, low of 70. Thursday, isolated thunderstorms, high of 86, low of 70. Friday, scattered thunderstorms, high of 87, low of 70. And Saturday, partly cloudy, high of 86, low of 69. Currently, it is 85 degrees here at KCFV. I'm Jell, and this has been your noon news update. But please stay tuned, because after a short break, we will be back with GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. until the time changes anyway. We will discuss the new game releases for this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are in theaters before going on to all sorts of random video game news. But until then, here is Crown the Youth by Brooke Royal here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. That was Crown the Youth by Brooke Royal here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Although, with the new semester coming up and quite a few things on my own personal plate, chances are that time may be changing soonish, so stay tuned to the GameBabble YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/user/GameBabble show. And, I will keep y'all updated there, because it could be a very sudden change. It'll probably be a very sudden change. So I'll let you know when we get that all ironed out and figure out what the next time I will be on will be. But it looks like I'm still going to be noon to 3 p.m. on Tuesdays for the next, probably week or two. Maybe. I don't know. It's all up in the air. Anyway, we like to kick the show off with the new game releases for this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are in theaters. So, without further ado, let's get things started. First of all, for PlayStation 4, we've got Arizona Sunshine Deadman, which sounds like it's an expansion pack for Arizona Sunshine, which is a good VR zombie shooting game. Then we've got Death's Gambit, Detective Gallo, Doggone Golfing, Domino Craft VR, which I don't need to tell you is a VR game, Guns, Gore, and Cannoli 2, Phantom Doctrine, Space Hulk Ascension, Super Knight Riders, Terra Tech, The Walking Dead, the Telltale series, the final season, episode 1, done running. Love reading those. Vroom Kaboom, which is, I believe that's a VR optional card-based vehicular combat tower defense game. I have no clue how it works. Kind of curious, though. Oh yeah, I think I heard that one's free, too. Sounds like I'm hooking my VR back up tonight. Wailing Heights. Let's see. Warhammer 40k Deathwatch XCOM 2 Collection. Then tomorrow, State of Mind, followed by Hero Defense on Thursday. Friday sees Persian Knights, Sands of Wonder, and Treadnoughts. That wraps it up for this week on PS4. Xbox One, what you got for us? Xbox One has Earhart, Tales of Broken Wings, Fall of Light, Darkest Edition, Phantom Doctrine, The Walking Dead, The Telltale series, the final season, episode 1, done running, XCOM 2 Collection, Coffee Crisis, Ferns Gate, Hero Defense, State of Mind, Wailing Heights, Drunk Foo, Wasted Masters, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, Persian Knights, Sands of Wonder, Polygods, and Treadnoughts. Nintendo Switch, what you bringing us this week? This week, Nintendo Switch brings us 2064 Read-Only Memories Integral, Cosmic Star Heroine, Tennis World Tour, The Coma Recut, Out of the Box, Penguin Coon Wars. That is tomorrow for Penguin Coon Wars in America, finally. Though I think people waiting on the physical edition have to wait a little longer. Still, hooray! That game finally gets a US release. State of Mind, Castle Storm, Johnny Turbo's Arcade Nitro Ball, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, Manual Samuel, Pick-a-Pix Deluxe, Large Puzzles 8, Mixed Puzzles 8, and Small Puzzles 8, Red's Kingdom, Roboto, Detective Gallo, Persian Knights, Sands of Wonder, Polygod, Treadnoughts, and is that this week or next week? That's next week. So that wraps it up for that, and then Vita has nothing this week, and 3DS has nothing this month. Moving on to next week, PlayStation 4 will be getting All-Star Fruit Racing, which is a pretty good-looking little indie kart racer. Brawlout, which is a pretty good-looking little indie Smash clone. Candleman, The Complete Journey. Dead Cells, which I've heard nothing but good things about, came out on Switch the other week. Fall of Light, Darkest Edition, Guacamelee 2, Pizza Titan Ultra, Shenmue 1 and 2, that hits, Slime Rancher, Spectrum, Super Life of Pixel, Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr, and, F1 2018 Mother Gunship, a new limited edition of the PlayStation 4 called the 500 Million Limited Edition, as well as Salt and Sanctuary. Next week on Xbox One, All-Star Fruit Racing, Brawlout, Shenmue 1 and 2, Tyler, Model 005, Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr, Distrust, F1 2018, Mother Gunship, Planet of the Apes, Last Frontier, and Spectrum. Nintendo Switch, what are you bringing us next week? Nintendo Switch is bringing us All-Star Fruit Racing, Candle, The Power of the Flame, Dead Cells. I thought that already came out on Switch. The Escapists 2, The Glorious Regime, Behind the Screen, Fall of Light, Darkest Edition, Ferns Gate, Hacky Zack, Hollow Knight, Gods and Glory, Caro Blaster, which is a new game from the maker of Cave Story, so get hyped for that. Shio, Sky Gamblers, Storm Raiders, The Low Road, Earthworms, Little Dragon's Cafe is next week, as well as the Switch version of Night Trap 25th Anniversary Edition. Ooh. And week after next is Blade Strangers. Anyway, Vita next week is getting Super Life of Pixel and Salt and Sanctuary. 3DS gets nothing! Yeah, they're winding down that 3DS. Anyway, moving on. Anime in theaters. So, first and foremost, Grave of the Fireflies. You got one more day to see that in theaters. That will be August 15th, tomorrow, dubbed. So if you want to see Grave of the Fireflies in theaters, better get on that tomorrow. Chances are it's probably a Fathom event, so it'll have like one showing. It'll be a little more expensive than usual. But go look into that. Moving on, Night is Short, Walk On Girl will be in theaters August 21st subbed and August 22nd subbed. No dubs for you. Laughing Under the Clouds Gaiden, Part 1 and 2 double feature will be in theaters from August 24th to September 15th. So that concludes our new games for this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are in theaters. So you know what that means. Time for a short break, and then we'll be back with GameBabble Live. and all sorts of random news information. Obviously, the big topic being the Nintendo Direct that went on immediately after my show last week. Tons of great information about the new Smash Brothers that has everyone hyped to buy a Nintendo Switch. Later on in the program, we will talk about the recent emulation Armageddon, the importance of emulation, and the legalities thereof. Believe it or not, there is a fighting game tournament in town at the Moonbase Market, and we will talk a little bit more about that later in the show. Along with that weird Mega Man cartoon that just came out that's weirder than I thought, and a number of other things. But I guess I should get this information out there before we take a break. Don't buy We Happy Few. I know, it has a fantastic premise, and we all wish it worked. But unfortunately, We Happy Few does not work. I admittedly haven't played it myself. I admit I just saw the Gimpressions on it, but yeah, apparently We Happy Few is a completely busted game, despite its new higher price tag. People are saying it is buggier than Road to Hell Retribution. So, yeah, that's a thing. If you don't know what Road to Hell Retribution is, it's a very buggy game, among other things. Yeah, I'd say We Happy Few might need some patches, but it's been in early access for a very long while. You'd think they would have fixed some of these things by now. So, that's disconcerting. Anyway, time for a break. Here's Lockdown by Centerpoint here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for more GameBabble. That was Worldwide by Lil Chris here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Although, chances are there will be a time change sometime, probably after next week. Don't know, got a lot of things up in the air. We'll keep you posted on the GameBabble YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/user/GameBabble show. Anyway, so, recently, this is rather interesting, there has been an interview with Sega's Toshihiro Nagoshi, and, which was posted in Edge magazine, and there's a little excerpt I'd like to read about his time working on F-Zero GX, which I think explains many things. So, from an interview with Sega's Toshihiro Nagoshi, he says, "Even though we'd lost the war in the hardware market, I wanted Nintendo to see how great Sega was as a company. We made lots of characters and courses, and we did the best we could for the graphics, using the best technology of the time. Even though we tried really hard making games for Sega hardware, they never sold too well, but F-Zero sold over 1.5 million copies worldwide. We realized the only thing we needed to admit was that Sega did not have the ability to sell hardware. That as a developer, we did not need to be pessimistic at all. After it released, I got a call from Nintendo. They said they wanted to see all the source code for the game, and wanted me to explain how we'd made that game in that time frame and with that budget in detail. They were wondering how we'd done it. They couldn't figure it out. We were able to achieve something a lot higher than what Nintendo had expected. And that's why you're not getting a new F-Zero." To make a long story short, Nintendo, when asked about a new F-Zero, has openly said, "We've reached the pinnacle of this series, we can't do anything more with it." They feel that F-Zero GX/AX is the greatest F-Zero. Sega blew them out of the water. They have no clue how to follow it up with anything, which is a pretty surprising admittance from Nintendo. The problem is, I could actually tell you how to follow up F-Zero GX/AX. You take F-Zero GX, you port it to the Switch, you add online play. Like, if you can do, especially if you could actually do, like, 30-player online, that would be amazing, because F-Zero, you're racing against like 30, 40 racers. If you could do that online with F-Zero GXAX, it would be amazing. And if you don't know how, call up M2 and they'll get you sorted out. Anyway, moving on, turns out that our friend Sweary has a new game coming out, not just The Good Life, which was what he kickstarted, but a game called The Missing, J.J. McField and the Island of Memories, which is a collaboration between his studio and Arc Systems Works. For everyone unfamiliar with Sweary, he is the guy who created Deadly Premonition, as well as a game called Spy Fiction back on PS2, and a couple other things. He's a bit of a rising Japanese video game auteur. A lot of people really liked his work on Deadly Premonition, and he just finished a Kickstarter for a game called The Good Life, which is looking pretty interesting. I look forward to seeing how that turns out. But come to find out, while they were running The Good Life Kickstarter, they had been working on The Missing, J.J. McField and the Island of Memories, which makes sense. If you're actually a real company, you don't want to sit around waiting for your Kickstarter to complete. You got to do something, so they've been working on this. Looks to be some kind of side-scroller game that's atmospheric and weird. I know nothing about it. Hopefully, it will be good. Moving on. Let's see. I mentioned that We Happy Few is a broken mess. A very good game idea, but it just plain isn't working. For anyone unfamiliar, We Happy Few is a very British-themed game all about, like, a town where everyone's forced to take drugs to make themselves, like, happy and forget about some kind of thing that happened in the war. And it's just getting out of control with everyone, like, trying to be happy all the time in this drug-induced haze. It's driving this guy crazy, and he's trying to escape and uncover what the truth is. And it's sort of a survival, kind of stealthish game, sorta. You know, you're definitely sneaking around and trying not to be detected as a downer, and so on. But unfortunately, while it has a very intriguing premise, I cannot do it justice. I was actually very interested in this game. Unfortunately, it has launched incredibly buggy, which is surprising. The game was actually kickstarted. It's been in early access for a while, and everyone's complained about how bad it's been. And then Gearbox actually showed up and offered to publish the game, causing We Happy Few to become a AAA game with a special collector's edition and cost twice as much as it was originally supposed to cost. And now it's actually out, and it is a buggy, busted mess to the point where it makes Ride to Hell Retribution look less buggy. It's looking really bad. Moving on, though, you know what isn't looking really bad? Red Dead Redemption 2 had some footage shown. Same thing with Doom Eternal. Apparently, there's going to be a Switch version of Doom Eternal. Problem is, with Red Dead Redemption 2, there's always going to be that one lingering question, which is, yeah, but how are you going to monetize this? What's the story? What's the scheme? Because Take-Two Interactive, the publishers for Rockstar's games, they've been enjoying the online aspect of Grand Theft Auto and been selling a lot of DLC for it, to the point where they have almost no interest in doing single-player content. So we're all waiting for the other shoe to drop on Red Dead Redemption 2, but until that shoe drops, looking very nice, people are very hyped. Let's see. For some bizarre reason, the Dragon Quest Monsters Plus manga is set to be released in America. It is drawn by one of my favorite manga artists, Mine Yoshizaki, creator of the Sergeant Frog series, as well as Arcade Gamer Fubuki, and doing the character designs for Otomedius Excellent, among many other things. I don't understand why this manga is coming to America now, because, number one, we haven't gotten a new Dragon Quest Monsters in a good long while, and number two, this manga came out quite a few years ago. I'd already read scanslations of it, but hey, it's nice that it's getting a English release. Okay. Hey, here's something that'll make a lot more people happy, though. Let It Die is getting a PC release. Speaking of kooky Japanese gaming auteurs, that is a free-to-play survival Dark Souls-ish game with online elements from Suda51. And people have been enjoying it on PS4. Apparently, it recently got a really big update, which is very nice, very nice. Surprised the heck out of a lot of people. Let It Die's been out on PS4 for a good long while, so getting a big old update like that kind of came out of nowhere. Kind of thought the game was over, but no. It's scheduled for a PC release, fall 2018, so any minute now. No, it's not scheduled for a release, though. Steep on Switch. Steep is sort of all sorts of snowy mountain sport kind of game, so, skiing, snowboarding, and the like. It's apparently available on all the other consoles. It was going to get a Switch release, but we hadn't heard hide nor hair of it, and now it has been quietly canceled. But while that's been canceled, hey, guess what? The Overwatch Summer Games 2018 are on until August 30th. Please enjoy your games of Lucio Ball, because that's a thing. Yeah, I don't like the way Overwatch handles just about anything, but I'm sure someone out there does. Anyway, this is interesting. Neko Para Volume 2 has come to PS4 and Switch. Very interesting. And while we're on the topic of the Switch, apparently, for those who care, there's a new Beyblade game coming out called Beyblade Burst Battle Zero. And what makes it interesting is that they actually use the Joy-Con controllers very interestingly. They use the gyros in them, so you actually, hold them like a top spinner and tilt them, and how you have them tilted affects how your Beyblade comes out of them, and it's like, that's a clever idea. Yeah, no. Better simulate the Beyblading experience. I mean, it's interesting, if nothing else. Also, speaking of Switch, Atelier Rorona, Totori, and Meruru are getting PS4 and Switch releases with enhancements. They're called, of course, their respective game names, like Atelier Meruru DX. So, get new content. The whole Arlen trilogy is getting released. Meruru was certainly my favorite of those. Very nice that they're getting Switch ports. That's certainly something the system could handle. Get us some more RPGs on it. That's very nice. Moving right along. So, there is an upcoming CG Sonic movie. I forget if it's all CG or CG in live action, but there's going to be a Sonic the Hedgehog theatrical film. We're all braced for it to suck. But Ben Schwartz from Parks and Recreation is going to voice Sonic in it. Yay. I'm sure that'll be great. I'm sure that. Moving on. Torchlight Frontiers is coming in 2019 for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, and that has me very excited, because I haven't heard hide nor hair of Torchlight in a while. For anyone who didn't remember the big Torchlight craze, I think it was a little bit after Diablo 3, this game called Torchlight came out, and some people liked it as a better Diablo. It was, cheap and kind of low budget, but it was this really, really, really solid Diablo clone. Some people felt did a better job of it than Diablo 3 did, and it received a sequel later on. But we haven't heard a single thing from Torchlight in a good long while, so hearing there's going to be a new Torchlight for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch definitely has me excited. Especially me, because I love that particular genre. I like Diablo-style games, but I hate mouse controls. It's always been, I hate using the mouse to control a single character. Diablo 2 is so good, but I really hate the controls in it. So I'm very happy about having a game like that coming to consoles. That isn't just, straight port of Diablo 3. Obviously, they got that going at one point. Also, Mega Man 11 has a demo coming out for Xbox One in September. I don't know why not anything else, but in September you'll be able to try Mega Man 11 if you have an Xbox One. Meanwhile, Valkyria Chronicles 4 has a demo out now. So if you've never played a Valkyria Chronicles, that would be a thing you should do. It's a very good strategy game, very nice visual style. If you're one, and you know what, I haven't tried the demo myself, but don't worry too hard about playing the rest of the series. I'm sure the connections between them are relatively loose, and besides, we didn't get 3 anyway. Valkyria Chronicles 1 was an early PS3 game. It has been re-released on PS4 and PC, which was a large part of why they decided to get back to continuing the series. Because Valkyria Chronicles 2 and 3 were on, I forget if it was PSP or Vita, and only one of them came to America, and they flopped, and the anime based on the series was terrible. And then, recently they did an action game called Valkyria Revolution, which I hear isn't very good, kind of like Dynasty Warriors with guns, but not so hot. And now we're getting a new proper Valkyria Chronicles with Valkyria Chronicles 4. Very nice to see the series back. Look forward to that. Anyway, looks like it's about time to take a break, so here's Mind's Eye by Logos, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. Catch you after the break. That was I Like Me Better by Luav, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. until the scheduling changes. It'll probably change in, I don't know, week after next, maybe the week after that. Don't know. Still feeling things out, still figuring things out. But I've got a lot of balls in the air. We've got a new semester starting, so chances are the time slot for the show will change once again. So please stay tuned to the GameBabble YouTube channel, which is, of course, youtube.com/user/GameBabble show. And I will post an update video the millisecond that I know what my time is. Well, slightly longer than a millisecond, because I will need time to make that video. Anyway, let's see. Anything else? And, you know what, all the rest of that stuff can wait until later. Because I think it's about time we talked about the big news from this past week. The Nintendo Direct for Super Smash Bros. Cripes, I was right. So, the week before last, you know, a weekend ago or so, the Evolution 2018 fighting game tournament happened, and all the different fighting games were announcing new characters and new content, and people were kind of expecting Nintendo to show something at EVO, because they actually had 2 Smash Brothers on stage. There were more Smashes on the main stage at EVO than there were Capcom fighters. That never happens. Cripes, I remember when Smash wasn't even allowed at EVO, and EVO was pretty much just all Capcom all the time, and now we've got more Smash than we do Capcom. So we were kind of expecting something out of Nintendo at EVO, but they didn't show up. But they did announce, like, very suddenly, oh, hey, we'll have a Smash Direct for you next week. And people are like, the what? Of course. Of course Nintendo is doing this. So that way they can have the stage all to themselves. That way, they don't have to share the spotlight with all these other characters getting announced. They don't have to get lost between G and Sagat and Pulamperna and all these other interesting characters being announced. Smash would just sort of blend into the crowd. You wait a couple days, you make a Smash Direct, and, the whole world has to stand up and take notice. So, first and foremost, we had, 2 100% new characters and 3 Echo Fighters announced at this Direct, making a grand total of 5 character announcements. The first of which being Simon Belmont of the Castlevania series in his classic design, not the red hair feather boa design. The original, kinda looks like Conan the Barbarian, Simon Belmont, is back. But the real surprise was that my boy Richter's there. Richter Belmont is showing up as an Echo Fighter of Simon, and that makes me so... You have no clue how happy that makes me. Richter, it's like one of my favorite video game protagonists. I never thought there would be a chance that Richter would show up in Smash, because if you're going to put in a Castlevania character, you put in Simon Belmont, or maybe Alucard, but who, by the way, will be an assist trophy. So, yeah, I was like, yo, it's going to be Simon, it's going to be Alucard, it's going to be one of them. There's no way they'd put in my boy Richter. And then there's Richter, and there's a very good reason for that. We'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, they also showed for Echo Fighters Dark Samus and Chrom from the Fire Emblem series. Dark Samus, of course, is from Metroid Prime. And as many people, a couple people joked, Dark Samus isn't just an Echo fighter, she's a Metroid Prime 2 Echoes fighter. Ooh, that's a good one. Anyway, and yeah, Chrom from Fire Emblem Awakening is there. He does indeed get his chance, and he's got a lot of people excited because he's not just a straight copy of anyone. He actually has a blend of moves from Ike and Roy and Marth, all mixed together. So he's a mix of the different Fire Emblem characters, which is good because there's already a lot of Fire Emblem characters. Be a little nice to have something at least mildly unique about Chrom. What's more, though, after announcing all of that, at the end of the Direct, they announced King K. Rool, which made many people very, very happy. K. Rool wasn't quite as requested as Ridley was, but a lot of people really wanted K. Rool, and a lot of people were speculating if it was even possible. See, King K. Rool, of course, comes from the Donkey Kong Country series, which was made in Europe by Rare, who is now owned by Microsoft. So people were like, does Nintendo own King K. Rool, or does Microsoft? The answer is, of course, Nintendo owns King K. Rool. If you've actually been paying attention, you'll know that K. Rool has shown up recently in Nintendo games. About the most recent appearance of him was in Mario Super Sluggers back on the Wii, which was a baseball game. He showed up in, like, Egyptian attire in that one. A lot of people forgot that, because a lot of people didn't play Mario Super Sluggers, but if you did, K. Rool was an unlockable character in that. Nintendo owned the rights. The reason why people were wondering if Nintendo owned the rights, though, was because they kept not using them in the Donkey Kong Country series. They made Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and both of those, they didn't bring back the Kremlings, the enemies of the Donkey Kong Country series. They kept inventing new enemies, and people were like, but what about the Kremlings? What about K. Rool? And so, people were starting to wonder if Nintendo owned the rights to K. Rool, and now here he is. He's in Smash, and a lot of people really want him. They want a new Donkey Kong Country representative. They want something that really represented Donkey Kong Country. And more than that, there's been a major push for villains, which they actually acknowledged in this Direct, because before showing off K. Rool, they showed this, like, little quick montage-y flash-by of all the different heroes fighting the different villains, recognizing that that's been a generally requested thing, is make sure there's a villain from every series. And that makes sense, because where else are you going to play as a villain? You don't get to play as Ridley. You don't get to play as K. Rool in any other game but Smash. And so I totally get it, and K. Rool is being handled very well. He's got references to, like, all of his appearances. He's got Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, I think 3, definitely 64. And it's fantastic. It looks like, another heavyweight, another villain. There was a good chunk of people requesting him, and they are very, very happy to see him here. Hooray for K. Rool. Having said that, that means there have been not one, but two major U.S.-focused Smash characters that have been added. No one in Japan cares about Ridley, to the point where Ridley is actually nicknamed Captain America in Japan because he was such an American request. And it's like, wow, I wonder what y'all are going to think of K. Rool. So I am going to say, somewhere in here, I expect a very, very, very Japanese-centric Smash Edition. And that's one of the things that really has me confused, is it's like, who would it be? Who is, like, the most requested Smash character from Japan who doesn't make the cut? what would be a very America doesn't care about this, but Japan is obsessed with this choice? And my two guesses, number one, actually first-party Nintendo would be Lip from Panel de Pon, which I would love because Nintendo keeps cutting her out of the U.S. releases of their games, and it would be hilarious to have her, finally show up in a form that Nintendo can't deny. I know she actually got a good number of votes on the Smash ballot, so there's a chance for her. But in terms of guest characters, my big guess is a Dragon Quest slime. Which might seem silly until you remember how big the Dragon Quest slime is in Japan. How much Dragon Quest slime merchandise there is. Cripes, I own a Dragon Quest slime-themed PlayStation 4, okay? It's kind of a thing. And the Dragon Quest games have all been released on Nintendo systems. You can actually play from 1 to 11 on a Japanese 3DS. Some of those didn't get US releases. But you could play pretty much the entire series on the 3DS in Japan. And there's a Switch version of Dragon Quest XI in development. But more than that, Dragon Quest is a big deal. It is legendary how huge Dragon Quest is. And it's historically important, too, because it's credited as being the game that pretty much invented the JRPG genre, right? So you gotta have a Dragon... And on top of that, they already have Square Enix on board. They've got Cloud in there. So, it wouldn't take much to ask them to let them use a Dragon Quest slime. And it would make sense, if you have Final Fantasy, that you'd have Dragon Quest. They've been the two rival games, and in Japan, Dragon Quest is actually bigger than Final Fantasy. So it would make sense to have a Dragon Quest representative in Smash. That's something I could very, very, very much see. And if anyone is going to represent Dragon Quest... I mean, it'd be either a slime or Torneko, Taloon, whatever you want to call that guy, the merchant guy. Maybe him. But the slime is it's the mascot for the series, pretty much the most popular character. There's no, real human character that's so popular they have to be in every Dragon Quest thing. There's no, the one Dragon Quest character beyond the iconic slime. So, yeah, no, my money's on a Dragon Quest slime. I legitimately think that's going to happen. But my big excitement is the fact that Richter Belmont is in there. Richter's one of my favorite video game protagonists of all time. I absolutely love his design. I love the fact they're using the classic design and not any of his garbage later designs that I hate. He's such a weird choice until you realize why he's there. To be blunt, Simon Belmont doesn't have enough moves to be a fully fleshed out character. They tried. They were like, okay, what we got? Oh yeah, in Super Castlevania 4, he had multi-directional whipping. We put that in there. In Super Castlevania 4, he had the whip brandishing. We put that in there. Okay, Castlevania, what do you think in terms of attacks? Well, you put in the sub-weapons. Cross-axe holy water. Boom. We good, but wait, what are we going to do for his up B? What are we going to do for his recovery move? We need a move where Simon, launches himself upward, something that can be used, as a jump. So he needs, an uppercut. Well, they could just make up a Belmont upper, or they look at the full series and they go, oh yeah, Richter has an uppercut. Richter also has a dashing whip spin and a leg vault, and he got a dive kick in Portrait of Ruin, which I guess you could call that a Jonathan move, or arguably a Maria move, though that was retcon. Thanks, Igarashi. So Richter has a bunch of moves, and Richter's basically a successor, a literal successor to Simon Belmont. So it makes sense that Simon could use those moves, but wait a second. Half of his moves now belong to Richter. Now you can't not put Richter in the game. It's the elephant in the room. Half of Simon Belmont is Richter. Actually, technically a third. It's 1/3 very Simon Belmont moves, 1/3 generic Castlevania moves, and 1/3 distinctly Richter moves. Either way, you look at it and you go, this character feels more like Richter than Simon. So they're like, fine, we'll put in Richter as an Echo Fighter of Simon. And I love the way they reference it in the Direct, where they say some of these moves originated from Richter, so it's unclear who is echoing who. Good call. Thank you, Sakurai. You get it. So, moving on, other things that were announced in this Smash Direct. The biggest one to a lot of people, it was kind of downplayed, but a lot of folks are excited about this, Final Smash Meter. You can switch from Smash Balls to a meter. You know, like in a normal fighting game, where as you fight, you build up a super meter, and then once it's full, you can unleash a super. A lot of people have wanted that in Smash. They didn't really like the Smash Ball, and now you get a choice between the two. However, the moves you get from the Final Smash Meter are weaker and less flashy. Basically, the ones you get from the Smash Ball, those are the ones that actually have cutscenes. Very short cutscenes, but cutscenes associated with them. Whereas the ones you get from the Final Smash Ball, they're just... Or from the Final Smash Meter, they're just really big moves. And that makes sense, because if we were pausing the game and cutting away to... If we were pausing the game and cutting away to cutscenes every time someone did an attack, it would be nuts, because with the Final Smash Meter, people are going to be getting Final Smashes a lot more. Now, it's not everyone fighting over the one Smash Ball. Now, everyone is building their Final Smash Meter independently of one another. And as such, if they did the cutscenes, then you'd just be sitting there watching cutscene. So instead, no, it's just the main move. It's just Mario throws a gigantic fireball. Samus has the giant laser beam. It doesn't really do the big cutaway, but I think that's going to work out really well, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. What's more, stamina battles are now considered a normal match type. Stamina battles, the thing that everyone forgets about because they've been hidden away as a bonus match type in all these games, is where instead of using the weird Smash percentage system where you have to knock opponents off the stage, characters have 300 hit points, deplete their HP to 0 to win. Like a normal fighting game. So it's interesting that they're pushing that. Also, they mentioned that when you play the game, you choose what rule set you want, then the stage, then the character. And I think that's very interesting, especially because they've shown you will just be able to save your custom rule sets to make it easier to select. So whatever the standard tournament rules are, you can just make that the default. You can put that at the top of your list, customize it, get it all set up, and then, bam, there you go, tournament rules. Also, another weird addition that's appreciated but weird, mid-game stage swapping. Now in Smash, in the middle of fighting in a stage, all of a sudden everything will start glowing and it'll switch to a completely different stage. Obviously optional, you can turn it on, very interesting. Moving on, Castlevania also has a stage of its own, which will feature a bunch of different Castlevania bosses and Kid Dracula. And it will have 34 different Castlevania songs from throughout the series history that has people, myself included, very excited because they're going with lots of weird stuff, including songs that were only in the obscure Castlevania arcade game Haunted Castle. So good times there. When push comes to shove, they have announced that there will be 103 stages in Smash Ultimate and 800 different stage songs, 900 songs total. And on top of all of that, apparently there appears to be a Monster Hunter stage and a Rathalos boss battle, and you can get Rathalos as an assist trophy. Okay. That's a lot of nuttiness. And on top of all that, there is some kind of mystery mode that they blurred out and are not ready to reveal at this time. People who have slowed the footage down, deciphered the pixelation and claim that the new mode is named Spirits. We don't know anything about Spirits mode, but it's pretty safe to assume it's some kind of story mode. I hope people aren't expecting the Subspace Emissary, because I don't think it's going to be Subspace Emissary. But it is good to know there should be some kind of wacky campaign mode. Personally, I'm kind of thinking / hoping that maybe Spirits will be some kind of crazy mode where, like, similar to Subspace Emissary, but less plot, more game references. Like, what if they did a mode where you pretty much had to play Donkey Kong, but with the Smash characters? So you're platforming through the old Donkey Kong stage, trying to get to the top. Hey, play through, like, a Castlevania-themed stage, beating up enemies and then fighting Dracula at the end. Something like that. Maybe that's what they're going with, like, no real plot associated with it, but something that goes beyond standard Smash fighting gameplay. So, that's what I think's going on with Spirits mode. Very excited for the game. Overwhelmingly excited, I might say. Especially now that Richter is in. Egad, there are so many characters I can play as now. It is making me exceedingly happy. I'm so excited for Smash Ultimate. And apparently it comes out December 7th. Because I know people are interested. Because every time one of these Smash Directs is happening now, people are getting more and more and more hyped for the game. And they're like, man, I'm going to have to get me a Nintendo Switch. When's this coming out? December 7th. It's going to be like the big game for Christmas. Which, hint, hint, you might want to grab your Switches now. Because I think stores are going to run a little short on Switches once Christmas gets here. Because right now there's no Switch shortage. It's not like the Nintendo Wii where there's like a huge waiting list and Nintendo is flagrantly shorting stores on units. No. You could go to Walmart or Target or Best Buy right now and get a Nintendo Switch. They're not shorting people on units. There's plenty of them out there. But with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee on the horizon and Smash Ultimate coming out in December, December 7th, there's going to be very high demand for Switch this Christmas. People will absolutely be wanting Switches for Christmas. I'm pretty certain it's going to be the hot Christmas item. So, might want to get one of those early while you still can. Just a little bit of advice there. Anyway, time for us to take a short break. So here is Never Call Me by Janae Alco FYG. That's what it says on my screen. Anyway, enjoy Never Call Me here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. And after a short break, we will be back with more GameBabble Live. Thank you. That was So Tied Up by Cold War Kids featuring Bishop Briggs here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m., though we are about due for a time slot change. I'll keep you posted on the GameBabble YouTube channel, which is, of course, youtube.com/user/GameBabble show. So please stay tuned to that as I try to figure out where the show winds up going from here. Anyway, so looking at the PlayStation VR subreddit, it looks like there's a little bit of an issue with Vroom Kaboom, which I said earlier was a free-to-play car combat game. Apparently, the free-to-play version of the game is showing up in the PlayStation Store as a demo with a full paid version showing up as the full game, which of course is pissing people off because the game had been advertised as free-to-play for so long. Now it's up in the store as a game that actually costs money, and they're like, what the heck, I thought it was supposed to be free-to-play, and they're like, no, there is a free-to-play one, but it's showing up as a demo because Sony screwed up, because Sony always screws up. They're trying to get this fixed. We'll see how long that takes. Either way, don't know how it is. People tend to be very salty about things, so it's hard to get a good grasp on things. So, let's see, where do we go from here? how about we talk about that Mega Man cartoon? Because, yeah, the first 10 episodes of that are out. For anyone unfamiliar, a Western CG animation studio managed to get the rights to do a Mega Man cartoon series called Mega Man Fully Charged. And it's airing on Cartoon Network. It's also on their own YouTube page. And it makes me appreciate the old American Mega Man cartoon from the 90s so much more. Mega Man Fully Charged is like Mega Man in name only. It is utterly baffling. It's not just an ugly art style that they're using where only the robot masters actually look good. It's the fact that the show doesn't get Mega Man on such a profound level that I don't understand why it's even a Mega Man show. Let's see. For starters, part of the plot revolves around the fact that there was a war between humans and robots in the past. This is quite striking because, Mega Man, starts with the creation of advanced robots. The war between humans and robots isn't until Mega Man X, and technically, the robots actually win that war. So, that doesn't quite work. So having that be a thing in the past is already pretty weird, but that's like the most normal thing in Mega Man Fully Charged. Next up, Dr. Light is young and buff, and he has a daughter who's is a biological daughter. It doesn't at all look like him, without getting too into detail on that, and is certainly not Roll. In fact, that's the other thing. Mega Man's name is Aki Light, which makes extra double no sense, because number one, why did you give him a Japanese name, especially because number two, Mega Man's name is Rock. Everyone knows Mega Man's name is Rock, and his sister is Roll. That's the thing. Music-themed naming. Everyone knows this. But no, Aki Light. Okay, that's weird. Not quite as weird as Mega Man having a friggin' PlayStation Playroom robot living in his head. Literally has a miniature robot inside of his robot head. That's weird. Though that's not quite as weird as Dr. Wily being a kid who's a classmate of Mega Man and his friend? Well, that makes no sense. And it just kind of keeps going from there, where you're just like, what does any of this have to do with Mega Man? The only thing that has anything to do with Mega Man is incredibly ham-fisted pixel art. Because all the time, they do these pixel art transitions with pixel art explosions, or it cuts away to a pixel art flashback. And on one hand, the pixel art looks a lot better than the actual CG in the show. It's kind of cool, except on the other hand, it's not authentic pixel art. It's not 8-bit, it's not 16-bit. It's that fake indie game pixel art where they can use inconsistent pixel sizes and there's no limitations on the colors they can use. And on top of all that, what's the point of it? Why is it there? It is simultaneously the best and worst part of the show. The best, because it's the best looking part. The worst, because it feels like this is the only thing that quote-unquote makes it Mega Man, is the fact that they keep cutting away to, little pixel art flashbacks and transitions and things, as if the show is desperately trying to remind you, hey, we're based on an old video game. Did you know we're based on an old video game? We're based on an old video game, you guys. Aren't we retro and cool now? Yeah, the only thing I'll give it is that the Robot Masters look good. Or at least Fireman did. But Mega Man Fully Charged, look, I know we're not the target audience for this. I know it's aimed at kids. That's not my beef. My beef is that it has nothing to do with Mega Man. At all. And also it looks ugly as all heck. Someone described the art style as looking like Paw Patrol, and it's like, yeah, no, actually, nail on the head. That's about right. Other than the Robot Masters, like Fireman looks really, really good. The show is dumb. The show is dumb. I don't understand why it exists. It boggles my mind. Moving on, let's see, some more random video game news. Bullet Girls Fantasia is out in English in Asia now. I definitely need to pick that up. It also looks kind of like a Dynasty Warriors clone, but with guns. Except it's... Apparently the plot is that the girls of some kind of gun club at their school get taken to a fantasy world where they fight, like, ogres and stuff. And there's, like, another team of girls who are, like, elves and things. It looks really fun. It also looks really lewd. Really, really lewd. But it looks like it could be kind of fun for people who are into weird, low-budget Japanese games, which would certainly be, me. Also, Dragon Ball FighterZ got a big ol' patch. Version 1.11 has lots of buffs and nerfs. Plenty of people covering that on YouTube. But if you haven't played Dragon Ball FighterZ in a while because you had issues with the character balance, hey, characters are now rebalanced. And also, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are confirmed to have Jesse and James of Team Rocket in it. Once again, they were not actually in the original Pokemon games, but they did show up in Pokemon Yellow, which Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are kind of sort of considered to be pseudo-remakes of Pokemon Yellow, so yay, Jesse and James get to show up. Good times. Team Rocket-tastic. Everyone should be pretty happy about that. And yeah. Let's see if there's any breaking news. No. Chief Design Officer Patrick Soderlund is leaving EA. He's the Chief Design Officer in the face of the Battlefield series. And now, leaving EA for greener pastures. Which would be anything that's not EA. So yeah, that's a thing. Also, Overcooked 2 apparently does not have a New Game Plus, but it's expected to be patched in September 2018. So that should be soon. Ish. Enough. And, yeah. Oh, hey, there we go. Dark Souls Remastered is going to hit the Switch on October 19th, 2018. I know it got delayed. So that will, hopefully make some people pretty happy. That's a thing. And yeah, just some good times. We definitely have more things to discuss, but I need to research something real quick like before I move on to my next segment. Pull something up for you all. So, if you don't mind, I think it's about time for a short, slightly longer than short, break. And when we get back, I will tell you about fighting game tournament going down this weekend at Moonbase Market. Because yes, there is a local fighting game tournament. I got some things to say about that. So please stay tuned to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Until then, here is Live in the Moment by Portugal the Man, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Thank you so much for listening. That was Make You Feel Pretty by Lovely the Band, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m., although there is a chance that our time slot will get changed pretty soon, because we've got a new semester starting up. New students will be coming in, and I'm currently working on getting an internship going. So all sorts of things going on right now. No clue what the new time period is going to be, but I'll let you know on the GameBabble YouTube channel. I will keep you updated there. Until then, though, wacky things happened. It's time to talk fighting game tournaments and Sailor Moon local battles. Yes, things getting wacky now. So, at EVO 2018, I watched the ARMS tournament that was unfairly blamed for putting all the side tournaments off. No, seriously, it was unfairly blamed. Why? Because it was Virtua Fighter that actually screwed up the timing. See, there was a Virtua Fighter side tournament, and it ran over by like an hour and a half to 2 hours. And ARMS was on next. So everyone tuned in for the things that were supposed to be on after ARMS, and ARMS was going, and ARMS matches looked kind of slow, so everyone just blamed ARMS, because no one blames Virtua Fighter for anything. Sometimes I hate Virtua Fighter. Anyway, so during the ARMS tournament, I noticed some people mentioning, hey, some of these people are from St. Louis, and I'm like, okay, that's peculiar. Only to then find out, I'm poking around talking with some friends. Turns out there is, in fact, a directory for different fighting game community discords. So if you want to find matches in Chaos Code or Phantom Breaker Extra or any number of other fighting games, there are little Discord communities for all of these different games that you can join. And I looked, and I noticed that one of the ARMS communities was the St. Louis ARMS community. I'm like, really? There's enough ARMS players here in St. Louis for there to be a community? And of course, I'm sure you're probably going to say, wow, do people even really still play ARMS? And the answer is yes. Because after I figured out where the heck I put my copy of ARMS, I immediately popped it in, tried to do a ranked match, found a match at 11:30 on, I forget if it was Sunday or Monday. No, it was Sunday. 11:30 p.m. on a Sunday. I was able to find a ranked match in like 5 seconds. And then yesterday, technically today, 2:30 in the morning, I decided to pop in my copy of ARMS. Couldn't find a ranked match, but I chose party match. Matches were easy to find. People are still playing ARMS. Apparently, this was something that really made me happy. Apparently, there are regular ARMS tournaments in Japan, and Mr. Yabuki actually shows up to do commentary on the tournament. For anyone unfamiliar, Mr. Yabuki is the guy in charge of ARMS. He's the guy who kind of headed the project, created the game, and he's also really good at it. He became kind of a legend because when they first showed off ARMS, they had this ARMS tournament, and whoever beat the tournament got to face off against Mr. Yabuki, and he blew everyone's mind, because everyone's like, oh, so ARMS, you're just jumping around throwing out random punches. Then Mr. Yabuki steps up, and he, doesn't even move, and instead just uses his arms to block his opponent's arms by just out-punching all of their attacks. It's like some absolutely amazing Zen master nonsense where he's just intercepting every fist. It's like, wow, this guy actually knows his game. So, Mr. Yabuki is a bit of a legend, and it's totally awesome that he commentates on ARMS tournaments in Japan and pays attention to him and loves his game that much. So it actually makes me wonder if we might get new ARMS content in the future. Because Nintendo said they're done, ARMS is done, we've done all the free updates, it's fine. But, Mario Kart 8 is getting some updates. They've said there's more coming for Mario Kart 8 in the future, and it was supposed to be done. So why not ARMS? Also, Nintendo said that they were done with the free updates. They could do something nutty like say, oh, hey, here's a really big, meaty, paid expansion that doubles the roster and adds in a bunch of new stages. Because honestly, we're in a very interesting time period right now where you don't really need sequels until the next console generation. We don't need an ARMS 2 all that badly when we could just have an ARMS 2.0. And I'm fine with that. I would rather people do big meaty expansion packs than actually just do a full-on sequel sometimes. It depends on how much you're adding, how much you're changing. So I'm fine with that. So yeah, it turns out there's a St. Louis ARMS community. decided to join because what the heck? And I find out, oh, hey, like, apparently there's a Twitch St. Louis channel, and they were airing Smash Brothers tournaments, and people were talking about upcoming tournaments. And one of them mentioned a thing called Apollo 9. I decided to look into it, and turns out that is a fighting game tournament going down this weekend at a place called Moonbase Market in Soulard. They're like a Magic the Gathering gaming store. They regularly stream Magic the Gathering tournaments, and they have pretty regular fighting game tournaments. So the tournament is called Apollo 9 Getting to Space, and I highly recommend looking it up because I'm not allowed to say prices, and there is, entry fee and pot fee on this because these are money matches. And yeah, what they have scheduled for events is at noon, there will be Smash 4 and Super Smash Bros. Melee. 2 p.m., Slap City and Rivals of Ether. 3 p.m., Under Night In-Birth EXE Latest, Brawlhalla and ARMS. 4 p.m., Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Guilty Gear Xrd, Rev 2. 5 p.m., Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. 6 p.m., Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle and Sailor Moon S, and 7 p.m., Tekken 7. Yes, there is going to be a Sailor Moon S tournament down here. I mentioned this in my SNES Fighters Discord, and sure enough, one of the big guys in the Sailor Moon community is indeed hosting the tournament. Apparently it gets pretty good turnouts. Seems like Sailor Moon S is really gaining some traction as a serious competitive fighting game. Of all things. It's the kind of thing that makes me, honestly, I need to get in contact with the guy and find out if he wants me to bring a 3DO. Because one thing that's rather interesting about Sailor Moon is that there's actually a couple more fighting games for it. There's one on PS1 and Saturn, which is garbage. And there's one on 3DO that's actually kind of okay, and I happen to own a copy of it and a 3DO, so if anyone wants to try that out, I would not be opposed to bringing it down. Maybe someone could figure out how to reattach my drive door on the 3DO. It popped out for some reason. Anyway, if I can, I would love to go to this tournament. I make no guarantees because, like I said, right now, a lot of things in my life are kind of up in the air. Working on possibly getting an internship or a job, figuring out when I'm rescheduling the show to. Got a lot of other things going on at the same time. But if nothing else is going on Saturday and I'm feeling good, I would really love to head on down to Apollo 9, try my hand at ARMS and Sailor Moon S, which, honestly, huge mistake on my part. I really shouldn't be doing this, because to be blunt, I don't know how good I really am in these games. Like, I have like no experience in Sailor Moon S, but I want to compete anyway. And ARMS, I think I'm pretty good at ARMS, but I haven't played a whole lot of it, so I've been making a point of trying to get into some ranked. I'm like, I need to spend a day just sitting down playing ranked matches and seeing where I really sit in ARMS. But yeah, I'm pretty interested in maybe heading on down and competing. Again, no guarantees, but that'll be this Saturday. Apollo 9 Getting to Space at the Moonbase Market. So go ahead and look that up. Apparently they'll have free pizza and Monster. I don't drink Monster, but that'll be interesting. So good times for all. Yeah. So I'm surprised. Apparently there's a lot more competitive gaming tournaments going on down here in St. Louis than I'm aware of, and I would love to keep y'all informed on those things. So I'm going to try to poke around, figure out what's going on with Twitch St. Louis and their Smash tournaments and things like that. Most of what I'm finding are Smash Brothers tournaments. It is easier to find a Smash Brothers tournament than a fighting game tournament, and I find that funny. And yes, I know Smash Brothers is actually a fighting game. I don't like it when people are like, it's not a fighting game. No, it's just a very different fighting game. But you know what I mean. I find it funny that It's so much easier to find Smash tournaments. I wonder how many of them ban Bayonetta. Hopefully all of them. So yeah, that's what's going on this weekend. And it's very interesting because, rest assured, we would likely never have a Sailor Moon S tournament without emulation. Which brings us to, of course, one of the other big topics of this week. And that is the fact that MU Paradise has closed down. Now, Nintendo themselves have not actually closed down MU Paradise. Rather, Nintendo filed some lawsuits against Love ROMs and Love Retro, two other ROM sites, forcing them to go down. And MU Paradise, knowing that they are the most popular ROM site on the internet, said, yeah, no, we're taking down our ROMs. We don't want to have to deal with the threat of legal action. In the very off chance you don't know what emulation is. Emulation is where you run a program that makes your computer or other system think that it is something else. Like a Super Nintendo emulator would make your computer think it's a Super Nintendo, which would then let you load Super Nintendo ROMs, which are literally data dumps straight from the cartridge. They are direct copies of the Super Nintendo cartridge data. Now, making your computer think it's a Super Nintendo is 100% legal. There is nothing wrong with that. The illegal part comes with the distribution of ROMs. And this is where things get really weird, because it is actually a legal gray area in a lot of ways. Because, yeah, just giving someone else ROM data is technically that's stealing, that's making a pirated copy of a game. The question is, if you already own the game, is it okay to own the ROM? Most people say yes, but others say, no, you have to directly rip your own game. Because if you made the ROM by ripping the data out of your own game, then it's legal. But if you own the game, but you get a copy of someone else's game, you're still technically getting a bootleg copy, but it really doesn't matter because you own the game. Then you get into some of the other weird hiccups. Like, what's the deal with a game where the company that made it is completely out of business? What do you do about that? Company that made it's out of business, no one's making money off of it. Who owns the rights to this game? Sometimes that can be left up in limbo. And so no one's really sure what the legal precedent there is. But then you get into, some of the just weirder things, like games that are, like, pretty much all emulation. It takes so long to get an emulator working that most of them are, of course, many generations old, so no one's really making money off of these games anyway, right? Which is one of the big arguments in favor of it. However, this is where things get tricky, because I have to say, I don't believe this current console generation actually exists. I don't think there is an 8th console generation. Why? Because this console generation is a rerun of all the previous console generations. There have been so many re-releases, so many HD remasters, so many taking old games, slapping on new hardware, and pretty it up a little bit, that I don't actually think this console generation exists. It's just a rerun of all the previous console generations. And as such, all of these old games and their ROMs, suddenly some of them are being sold again. Not all of them, but some of them. And it's like, I could totally see them defending this because, people are because now these ROMs have actual value. Now they could make money off of it. But this is where things get into, like, even more wacky territory, because it's hard to prove that the pirating of ROMs actually affects anyone financially. Let me tell you why. I would say one of the clearest examples of why Nintendo would want to go after ROM sites is for things like the NES Classic and Super NES Classic, right? SNES Classic, NES Classic. They're, they contain a bunch of old games, and you can play them on your TV, and they're freaking fantastic. But every time someone brings those up, every time, like clockwork, every time you talk about the NES or Super NES Classic, someone will show up in the comments, usually a large number of people will show up in the comments, talking about what a waste of money it is, and how you could make and how you could basically make the same thing with the Raspberry Pi for a much lower price, and it would be way better because it could just play hundreds of different NES games. It could play all these different games on all these other systems, ignoring the legalities. And it's like, oh wow, if everyone is just going out and making Raspberry Pis for emulating their games, then they don't need to buy NES Classics, so that's cutting into the profits. And wait a second, isn't the NES Classic that thing that Nintendo released, it sold out instantly day one and then said they weren't going to make any more because it was a limited time product until their shareholders got angry at them, and so they decided to re-release them recently, and, you know, now a year later the NES Classic is back. It's still selling very good. Actually, we might have finally hit equilibrium because I was at Target the other day and I saw both a Super Nintendo Classic and an NES Classic on store shelves. I don't know how much longer they're going to be on store shelves, but I actually saw them sitting there on store shelves. These things have sold incredibly well. So the argument that emulation is cutting into their profits is questionable, especially because Nintendo was initially like, oh, these are limited time products. Once they're sold out, well, tough luck, we're not going to make any more. That was Nintendo's original stance. But what makes it particularly funny is that people have hacked into the NES Classic, and they've looked and they've noticed that the copies of the games that Nintendo has on the NES Classic are ROMs they downloaded from the very ROM sites they're trying to shut down. See, when someone rips their game cartridge, it generally leaves a little header there, like a little stamp saying, you know, this game was ripped on this date at this time. And people looked at it and matched it against older ROMs. Like, they looked at the copy of Super Mario Brothers on the NES Classic, and they were like, hey, wait a second. This was ripped back in, like, I don't know, 1998 or something. Nintendo certainly did not rip this at this exact date and time, which happens to be the exact same date and time that this copy of the ROM was ripped that I downloaded from here. So Nintendo actually went around and downloaded their own ROMs off of these emulation sites they're trying to shut down. Now, ain't that just hilarious? There's something just kind of magical about that. Now, of course, all of these are the arguments you've already heard about emulation and its questionable legality. But in recent times, emulation has gotten more and more weird. Case in point, I was just watching a Final Fantasy IV randomizer competitive race. If you're interested in these, look up a channel called RPG Limit Break. They put archives of them on their YouTube channel, or you can watch their Twitch channel, where they are actually streaming it as a competition. The Final Fantasy IV randomizer actually, like, changes the game, so that way you can freely move around and do a bunch of quests out of order, while also randomizing who shows up where. Like, I was just watching a race where everyone had to start with Edward as their main character, and they got Tella as their second character. Yeah, the location of different characters and items and who winds up in your party are all completely random, and there's a website, and, like, you could type in different randomizer seeds, so that way everyone can have their game randomized in the same way for competition. So that way everyone has the same weirdly mixed up randomized game. They have no clue what's going on, and it's all just a scavenger hunt to find the necessary items to get to the moon and fight and beat Zeramus. And it's so weird, because It's a tournament series. They had preliminaries and qualifiers, and they're going to have grand finals. And I'm just watching this like, this is competitive random Final Fantasy speedrunning. What in the entire heck even is this? No one would make this. This is not a game that would ever exist. No one would say, yes, let's make an RPG that has practically all of the story scrubbed out of it. You start with an utterly random group of characters and no one knows what's going on for the sake of competitive play. Maybe someone will make this game now. Maybe someone will make a game based on the Final Fantasy IV free enterprise randomizer races. But as of right now, this is not something that would normally exist. No one would make this on their own. But thanks to ROM hacking, it now exists, and there's a competitive league for it. And, I don't think anyone's losing money off of this because, of course, the randomized Final Fantasy IVs are such a scrambled mess. And honestly, in order to really pull them off, you kind of had to have played through and already beaten Final Fantasy IV and be familiar with it anyway. So chances are all the people competing already bought Final Fantasy IV at least once, if not like 5 times already. So it's hard to say that they're losing money off of it, and it created this new creative thing. What's more, that Sailor Moon S tournament going down, chances are that never would have happened without the power of emulation, because Sailor Moon S was never released in America, and it would have been a pain in the butt to import. And even if people had imported it, not enough people would have played it to really figure it out. And what's more, who the heck is going to play serious competitive Sailor Moon in your local area? Thanks to the power of online play, like I was discussing the other day, Sailor Moon S is able to be played competitively over the internet, which allows people to really feel it out and see, is it broken or is it balanced? How does it really hold up in serious competitive play? It's all very, very interesting. And all these things wouldn't have been possible without this. But the legality is still questionable. I agree. But at the same time, most companies that aren't Nintendo generally turn a blind eye to it, because when push comes to shove, it's all a thing. Especially because generally speaking, it tends to help companies more than it hurts them. Case in point being one of my favorite video games of all time, Waku Waku 7. I never saw that in an American arcade, and the first time it has ever been released in North America, like on a home system, was the recent Nintendo Switch version, which you bet your butt I bought the moment I got a Nintendo Switch. First order of business after making sure my Switch wasn't broken and can read cartridges was to buy Waku Waku 7. I love that game. And I never would have known about it if it weren't for emulation. People told me about Waku Waku 7. I gave it a spin. I couldn't believe my computer was making such a beautiful game play back then. And later on, I went out, bought legitimate copies of the Sega Saturn version, which isn't very good. I actually have a Neo Geo home cartridge of it, which is the most expensive game I've ever bought. And thank goodness I bought it when it did, because, wow, have prices skyrocketed on that one. And then it got a PS4 port, and I picked that up, and then now it's on Switch. And I'm not alone in this. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, wow, Waku Waku 7's on Switch. I got to go pick that up. No one played that game. No one played that game up until it was able to be emulated. And that was a very important thing with Waku Waku 7's spread in popularity. And even then, we don't have any means of playing that game online right now, other than through things like Fightcade and the like. It's a very interesting situation there. But I can safely say the internet had helped the popularity of Waku Waku 7 and contributed to its downloads. And what's more, I need to take a break, so we will continue this conversation after we do take ourselves a short break. But until then, here is Roller Coaster by Bon Jovi here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you. That was Plain Jane by ASAP Ferg here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jellin. Welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m., except our time slot will probably change relatively soonish. I will keep you posted on the GameBabble YouTube channel, which is, again, youtube.com/user/GameBabble show. So, before the break, we were talking, of course, about emulation and the tricky situation it's in. Namely the fact that it is technically illegal, but opens up so many possibilities, so much creativity, and generally speaking tends to make companies more money than it costs them. Because there's just so many weird situations out there. And, like, another weird one, of course, the legendary weird one, is the situation of Mother 3, the sequel to Earthbound, widely regarded as one of the greatest RPGs ever made. A lot of people really like it. There's even a character from it, Lucas, in Smash Brothers, along with New Pork City, which is also a stage from Mother 3, but Nintendo has repeatedly refused to bring the game to America, despite fans begging them to, despite fans doing the translation for Nintendo, sending it to them and saying, I will give you money to put this on a cartridge and sell it. Nintendo still refuses. And this has driven the fan base completely insane. There is a fan translation you can play through emulators, but it is technically not legal to do so. I mean, you could, of course, import a copy of the original Mother 3 and then play the game through emulators translated, but we're not really sure if that's technically legal. But it has driven us all insane, and honestly, knowing about the content of Mother 3 and the tricky situation it would put Nintendo in if they released it in this current year, much as I don't like to say it, Nintendo is in a situation with that game where I don't think they can release it in America, which sucks. But I understand why they would be wary to do so. And yeah, as such, people's only way of playing it in English is through emulators. Similarly, one of the first games to ever be fan-translated was Seiken Densetsu 3, the sequel to Secret of Mana, widely regarded as one of Squaresoft's greatest games they have ever made. And people have been salty about the fact that it never got a US release for years. They still, despite the fact that it was one of the first games ever to be fan-translated and you could just download it for free, people still beg Squaresoft to release the game in America. And they still refuse to. They still find it to be a tricky prospect to give it a US release. So it always winds up putting us in these weird situations. That's not even getting into arcade games. There are thousands upon thousands of arcade games that have never gotten a home port, some of which I feel are very important. The one that I think goes at the top of that list for me would be Guardians, aka Denjin Makai 2. If I ever get around to reviewing this game, I would give it a 6 out of 5. Why? Why would I break the scale for this game? Because it is the greatest beat-em-up ever made, past, present, and future. Yes, future, because there are indie beat-em-ups coming out right now which continue to be inferior to Denjin Makai 2. It is the high pinnacle of the genre, so why have you never heard of it? Oh, I don't know, maybe the fact that it was only ever released in Japanese arcades in 1995, and that's it? No home port? No US release? No way to even know about it. We didn't even know about it until, it started getting emulated, and then people, they downloaded it, they played it, and they're like, what the heck, this game is amazing. And I'm sitting here like, if they would re-release this game, I would gladly pay $30, $40, $50, $60 to own a proper physical copy of this game, to be able to play it on my PlayStation 4 or Nintendo Switch. If they do an arcade archives of Denjin Makai 2, I will throw my money at them so hard. But until then, I think it is vital that anyone developing a beat-em-up sit down and play this game, because so many people think that beat-em-ups are just walking forward, mashing the punch button. So many people think Final Fight of all games is the pinnacle of beat-em-ups. Final Fight isn't even as good as Double Dragon. It's got nice presentation, but the original Double Dragon is a better game. Quit lying to yourself. Capcom fans. So many people, they base their idea of what a beat-em-up can be on Final Fight and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which are like at the very low bottom end of what a beat-em-up can be. You play Denjin Makai 2, which has 8 different playable characters, each of which has like a bigger moveset than most fighting game characters. And it has a brilliant energy and blocking system, and special moves that are linked to specific weapons, and vertical dodging, and a sick combo system, and desperation moves, and branching paths, and all these friggin' features. And yeah, there's pretty much no denying that Denjin Makai 2 is one of the greatest beat-em-ups ever made. And we can't evolve this genre until people play Denjin Makai 2, see what it did, and go, oh yeah, a beat-em-up can be more than just walking forward and mashing punch. It can evolve past that. Until that happens, the evolution of beat-em-ups stopped in 1995. In Japan, in arcades, with Denjin Makai 2. You could absolutely top that game, but you need to know the game exists. Now, having said all of this, there are 2 things I do want to address. Namely, number 1, I actually do know a time where emulators did hurt a game's sales. You see, most of the time, like I said, an emulator is not actually produced until something is incredibly outdated. But portables, they generally tend to be weaker than consoles, and so they're easier to emulate. The Game Boy Advance was emulated while it was still relevant. And this caused 2 particular treasure-based incidents to happen. The first was the IGN review of Advanced Guardian Heroes. Now, I need to look back through my archives to see what it was, but I remember if you tried to emulate Advanced Guardian Heroes, there was an emulation bug that made the game play not as good. And IGN brought it up in their review, showing that IGN had actually reviewed the game and docked it points based on a bug that only appears if you play an illegal copy through an emulator. Always found that kind of interesting. The other one, though, and the one that I'm still salty about, is Gunstar Superheroes. You see, way back when the GBA was a thing, the game Gunstar Heroes was set to get a sequel called Gunstar Superheroes on the GBA. I remember posting on a message board, it was Higher Voltage, and everyone was super excited for the game, and they couldn't wait to play it. There was a big old thread on it, and everyone's so excited, and the game releases 1 week early in Japan, and people are so excited to play it that they download the Japanese ROM and run it on a GBA emulator, and everyone gets disappointed and decides not to buy the game except me. They complain about, like, stupid minor things like, oh, it doesn't have 2-player co-op. Yeah, how often do you 2-player co-op through a link cable on a GBA? It's not that big of a deal. Oh, I can't catch and throw grenades. Game's crap. I'm not buying this. And I'm like, but it's a good game in its own right. It's a really good game. You knew it wasn't going to be exactly the same as the original Gunstar Heroes. You knew it wasn't going to be as good as that. Cripes, it's just such a phenomenal game. Pretty darn hard to top it. You knew all this going in. You knew this. And yet people were like, yeah, no, I'm not going to buy it. And so I actually do know a number of people who did not buy that game because they were able to play it through an emulator and decided that it wasn't worth the money. Now, having said all of that, even though we live in a time where all of the games are getting reruns, and thus, emulators tend to hurt that. Can I just say that it doesn't take too terribly much other than a bit of effort to make those things worthwhile? A part of me sees emulators as a good thing, because if all companies were doing were taking their old games, slapping them in an emulator, and reselling them, it would feel a little like a ripoff. Even though that has actually worked out, as that's what the Virtual Console was. Yo, hold my tongue here a minute. The Virtual Console back on the Wii was a huge success. People were very excited for that. If you don't remember, that was where Nintendo was honestly selling their games, just ROM in a kind of not good emulator. I guess it ran the games well, but it didn't have a lot in the way of options. You couldn't reconfigure the controls, and that caused all sorts of problems. But Nintendo re-released a bunch of their old games through a thing called the Virtual Console back on the Wii, and they were honestly pretty ludicrously overpriced for what they were, depending upon the game, and yet people bought them. All of us bought them. We were very happy with the Virtual Console, with Nintendo giving us this legal emulation solution. But then the Wii U came out, and there was no way to just copy your Virtual Console games over. The Wii U reset the Virtual Console. It was a whole new set of Virtual Console games. Now, you could transfer your Wii data over to your Wii U and have it in there, and so you could switch to the Wii emulator and play your Virtual Console games that way. And if you rebought the Wii U version of your Wii Virtual Console games, they gave you a discount, but you couldn't just carry the data over. You couldn't just re-download them. You had to pay for your games again. And now, with the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo has outright said there's not going to be a Virtual Console at all. What the heck? And this is the thing everyone who talks about emulators brings up. If there was a legal way to get these games, the majority of people would buy them the legal way, because there's so many headaches associated with emulators. The emulation isn't necessarily perfect. Denjin Makai 2, I mentioned earlier, has a number of different graphical bugs, and I question if the audio is actually correct or not. But we'll put up with it because we don't have any other way to play the game. If we could be guaranteed, better emulation, we would absolutely pay actual money for it. And then you get into, add some bonus features. Hey, remixed soundtrack. Egad, even though I already owned the stupidly expensive Neo Geo home card of Waku Waku 7, when they added a color edit mode and a brand new remixed soundtrack to the PS2 port of Waku Waku 7, oh my goodness, it blew my mind. It was worth every single freaking penny just to hear that soundtrack. It was so good. It wasn't the Saturn soundtrack. I have the Saturn version. Different soundtrack. They did a brand new soundtrack just for the PS2 port of Waku Waku 7. It's so good. And that generally tends to be a big selling point. Fans of games are fans of games. If you offer them new content, bonus content, new enhancements and features on one of their old favorite games, they will buy it again. I think video game companies know this. I think they know they can abuse this. And as such, all emulation tends to do for a lot of these companies is create new fans. That said, I won't deny the fact that the recent Sega Genesis collection probably, it's kind of outclassed by emulators. See, Sega's kind of been re-releasing the exact same collection of games on PS2, 360, PS3, and now on PS4 and Xbox One. They've, shifted around a few games. But the big new addition for the new Sega Genesis collection is, now you can play the games online. And a lot of people rushed out to buy it only to find out that the netcode was garbage, and come to find out that through Mednafen you could actually play all of these games and more with better online play. And that's a good example of both ways, where on one hand, a lot of people rebought a collection they had already bought multiple times because of the promise of the new feature of online play, and then Sega did a bad job of it, and running it through emulators wound up being better. Similarly, Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, that one also has a similar problem, where, honestly, emulators provide people with way better netcode than what's actually included. On top of the fact that 30th Anniversary only lets you play Hyper Fighting, Super Turbo, Alpha 3, and Third Strike over the internet. They snubbed Alpha 2, and a lot of people, a significant number, considers Alpha 2 to be a better Street Fighter game. So they feel very snubbed, but you could play that online, questionable legality through emulators. And, same thing with all of the other games, and you would get better netcode out of it that way. But a lot of people still bought that Street Fighter 30th Anniversary collection, especially because there's so many games, and it's so convenient, and the emulation's pretty solid on it. And it was released on Switch, unlike that Genesis collection, if I recall. And that's the thing. Having all those Street Fighters available to you on the go, on the Switch, kind of a major selling point. You're starting to see what I mean. It's such a weird and tricky and bizarre situation when it comes to emulation. But we are out of time for the show this week. So thank you very much for joining me. I will keep you posted on the GameBabble YouTube page as to any sort of changes for time periods and when I will be on. But until then, yeah. I want to thank you all for joining me on GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which is currently airing from noon to 3 p.m. every Tuesday. Hopefully, we will be back next Tuesday, but who knows? If I'm lucky, then I might have an internship getting in my way. Technically an externship, but whatever. We will certainly see when that happens. Again, keep you posted through the GameBabble YouTube page, because I don't know anything yet. Fingers crossed, though. Remember, there's a tournament in Soulard at Moonbase Market for a variety of different fighting games, including ARMS, Guilty Gear, Marvel vs. Capcom, Tekken 7, and Sailor Moon S. Don't know if I'll be there, but I'd love to be. I will see what I can do. And until then, I've got a whole lot of training in ARMS to do. So thank you so much for joining me here on GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which is currently airing. You heard the spiel. I have like one more minute to waste, and I have no clue what to say about it. So, yeah. Sure is a thing. Sure is a minute. Penguin Wars is tomorrow. Cripes. I don't know. Yeah, thanks again. It's just, I've enjoyed doing this show. I don't enjoy waking up to do the show, but I enjoy doing the show. And, yeah, it's just so many good times. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad y'all are listening. I'm glad I'm wasting 50 more seconds before kicking you back to the music. Which, you know what, I should just introduce the next song. So, thanks again for joining me this week. Coming up next, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind, here in Ferguson, Missouri, is Rapture by Under Oath, here on 89.5 FM. Thank you so much for listening. Maybe I'll see you next week. Let you know on the YouTube page. Enjoy the music.